Buckle up, it's about to get perhaps a little bumpy in Brad Pitt's new film, Bullet Train. Let's talk about it. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my spoiler-free review for the new action comedy film, Bullet Train. This is in theaters exclusively right now and having a pretty nice opening weekend, hitting around $30 million and a first-place victory for this first weekend for Bullet Train. So before we get into this movie, I do want to welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thanks for finding this video. Lots more where that came from. A lot of TV and movie reviews you can watch right here on Dan Reviews It. Please consider subscribing too. Would love to have you aboard. But speaking of aboard, let's talk about this movie Bullet Train, shall we? So Brad Pitt is really kind of on a hot streak. Earlier this year, he was in the movie The Lost City, which was very good. I enjoyed it very much. Probably among my top comedies of the year, I would say. That was he had a more minor role, but it was mostly Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum and Daniel Radcliffe. But Brad Pitt had a minor role, and Sandra Bullock returns the favor here, mostly on the telephone. She is sort of the agent that he is communicating with. But so another mashup, or team up, I should say, with Sandy B and Brad Pitt. But anyway, the basic plot of the film is he is a former assassin nicknamed Ladybug, who has to sort of take on this new assignment and deal with the enemies within this Japanese bullet train. And that is most of the action, most of the film takes place on this train. And it makes sense because the director here is David Leitch, who has done a lot of sort of the top, action comedy type movies of the last few years. He directed Deadpool 2. He directed Hobbs and Shaw, which was the Fast and Furious spinoff, which, in itself, it wasn't a good movie, but Ryan Reynolds was on board for that in a supporting role and brought the funny there. So it did kind of make it into that action comedy territory. And then Atomic Blonde, which is more a straight ahead drama, but I will say one of the best scenes and most memorable scenes of that movie, Atomic Blonde, was this extremely close-knit space action sequence in a stairwell. And so it makes sense, David Leitch, no stranger to these sort of smaller set pieces and stuff, and making them seem, larger than life. And a lot of other familiar names in here, including Joey King, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Brian Tyree Henry from Atlanta, and some others. And there's a few cameos in here that I won't talk about. I will let them sort of speak for themselves when they do come up. But this is sort of, billed as an action comedy, and I think it could work on both levels. The humor, I think, is not going to work for everybody. The action, I think, will work for most. But the plot, I think, is where this sort of falls into questionable territory. I'm not going to say that it's incoherent. You could get it, but there's so much going on, and they're throwing so many things at you. It is definitely hard to follow along with who is double-crossing whom, and what they're about, and who they're working for, and blah, blah, blah. So, if you go into this sort of with the mentality of, all right, plot maybe doesn't matter as much, we're just gonna, check our brains at the door for a couple of hours and have a good time, watch the action sequences, maybe get some chuckles. Okay, that is the correct attitude as you enter in this movie. And, I could kind of tell that from the preview. I'm a person that does not watch a lot of trailers. I try to stay away from them. I think they give away too much of the movie. But I was watching a movie at a theater other than my own, and so we got there in time to see like 2 or 3 previews, because I didn't know how many previews they would have, and it was the Bob's Burgers movie, and Bullet Train was one of the previews, and I had never heard of it, and this was maybe like in May or early June, and I was like, well, this looks pretty fun. It looks kind of silly, for an end of summer release, early August. That kind of makes sense to sort of slot that in there. Could be a fun sort of check your brain at the door kind of movie. And it turns out that's almost exactly what this is. If you do not think too hard about the plot schematics, I think you'll have a better time in the movie. So let's sort of break it down a little bit. Let's talk about the humor of the movie. I think it does not all work. There's a couple of running gags and running threads throughout the film that I'm not sure I was completely on board with, no pun intended. But there's one about like the Thomas the Tank Engine movie that just is a touchstone for this whole character in the movie, not Brad Pitt's, but one of the other characters. And I don't know, it got a little stale for me. They were pushing that comedy well over and over and over again. Really, every couple of minutes there was a reference or a joke to this guy's love for Thomas the Tank Engine. Okay. I mean, I never watched the show, so maybe some of the references about who's Percy and whatever, maybe that just went over my head, and that's why it didn't quite hit with me. But that's just one example of like a joke that they really beat into the ground with this movie. I would say I was a good maybe 45 minutes into the movie before I finally got my first genuine laugh out of this film, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I was following along with what the plot was and trying to figure things out, and I was enjoying the action on the screen. But I did think at one point, I was like, I thought this was billed as an action comedy. Like, when are we going to do the jokes? And then the more we sort of get to know this Ladybug character of Brad Pitt's, and he's doing kind of the cool guy Brad Pitt type thing. In fact, it's a little bit of an extension of his character from Lost City, because he is kind of like this Zen, meditative type character, which is, okay, that's sort of humorous because he's an assassin, but he's all about sort of the peace and love. And all right, so that's kind of humorous, but it did remind me a little bit of that character from Lost City. But once I got sort of the comic sensibilities of that character, I was like, okay, now I'm sort of getting the jokes, and he's doing this kind of Brad Pitt thing that he's done recently in some of his movies that I really like. It's sort of the cool guy attitude, and he's pushing 60. He looks amazing, and it suits him. This sort of laid back, McConaughey type attitude, I guess. It really does work for him, and in this movie specifically, it definitely works. Now, in terms of borrowing from other movies, and I could kind of tell this again from the trailer that it was going to be sort of a Tarantino-esque movie, maybe a little bit as well of the Guy Ritchie kind of sensibilities, and both of those are on full display here. So in terms of the filmmaking, in terms of the the shots and the text on screen, and even the soundtrack is very Tarantino-esque and that sort of thing. It is pulling from a lot of other movies like that. And look, Brad Pitt's last major starring role was as the second lead in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood from Tarantino, and obviously in his earlier career he did some of the Guy Ritchie stuff, so it makes total sense that he would sort of be drawn to this kind of movie. And I think it definitely although it has those shades, does not quite live up to those things. I don't really like a lot of the recent Guy Ritchie stuff, but some of the old stuff, Snatch and that kind of thing, I really did enjoy. And it's definitely not quite up to that level, and I don't think it's up to the level of really any Tarantino film, to be frank. But I don't think it's a surprise that the main sort of thing that draws this plot together is a briefcase. And of course, we think about Pulp Fiction and Tarantino and the briefcase, and all right, there we go. It's all sort of coming together there. And there's, flashbacks here to some past things, and at one point, the twins, as they're known in this movie, Brian Tyree Henry and Aaron Taylor Johnson, go back and sort of look at all the people they've killed over the years on different assignments or whatever, and that in itself was like very Tarantino-esque. And I'll be honest though, none of that really distracted me from my enjoyment of the movie. The truth of the matter is, if you go into this movie with that sort of check your brain at the door attitude, I think you might have a lot of fun with it. I certainly did. Now, the acting, other than Brad Pitt and some of the other people, Joey King was putting on some sort of accent that I don't think she ever consistently nailed. But I will admit, I just reviewed her movie The Princess on Hulu, and one of the comments I made was that I didn't quite buy her as this action star. So it was very interesting to see her in this, because I totally did. I did, and I think that speaks to a difference in script. The Princess, she did okay, but it wasn't that great of a movie. and it was a lot more action than character development. Here, I think they try to do some character development. I'm just not sure it always works. But at least they were giving us something. But I think it's a better script overall than that movie, and I did buy her more in this as, sort of a hit woman. So look, overall, I think this is a fun, enjoyable end of summer popcorn type movie. It does not get a super high grade from me because it is very convoluted, and I think it is going to vary. I think your mileage, again, no pun intended, a lot of train puns here, it is going to vary based on if this is going to hit your comic sensibilities, if you care that much about deep plots and things that make sense or maybe don't make sense. But overall, I did enjoy this movie. I'm going to leave Bullet Train with a B-. All right, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Damn Reviews It. Bye.